So when it comes to kids and we're teaching them, whether it's yoga or whatever topic, it's okay, look, yes, this is not a good thing. So how then would we maybe talk to somebody about this and let your kids have those kind of fumbles within the home? So that way they become, once they leave the home, they become better stewards of their spiritual armor and better representators of Christ when they're out there.
Welcome to the Mama Bear Apologetics Podcast,
a podcast where we teach you to roar like a mother.
And by roar, we mean recognize the message, offer discernment, argue for a healthier approach, and reinforce these ideas with your kids.
Unless you want to growl around your house. I mean, that's cool too. You're like, check it. We keep it reals. That's so bad.
You're awesome.
Mama Bear Apologetics is a listener-supported program, so if you like what we do, head on over to the Mama Bear Apologetics website and click support.
It's time to rise up, ladies.
Rise up, Mama Bears. This might not affect your faith,
but it might affect your children's.
Hey there, Mama and Papa Bears. Welcome to another Mama Bear Apologetic Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping you raise kids to love biblically, think critically, and stand firm against the cultural tide. We want to welcome you. I mean, we've had a lot of amazing things happen so far this year. We have got a new Mama Bear book that's out. That's Honest Prayers for Mama Bears that, gosh, Alexa and I contributed to. So many moms contributed to this book. And it's beautiful. It's a wonderful book to just sit back and just pray freely and just connect with other moms who are going through the same things you are. Alexa, I'm sure you've probably leafed through it. One of the things that we love about this book is, oh, wow, other moms have these same feelings as I do.
Yes. Gosh, it's so validating.
It really is. And, I noticed that even in school, when a professor would share when he completely messed up or bombed or, a presentation, like that was the best thing that I could hear as a student. And I think as other moms, when you can hear that, man, somebody else completely bombed in this parenting moment, or, that is just, it makes you feel so much better.
Yep.
So today, yes, get that book. It's absolutely wonderful. It's great for baby showers, for, just loving on your mom or grandmama. It's wonderful. But today, what we want to do is Alexa and we're going to be covering an issue that, just like Enneagram, I think is really focused in on moms. And that is this idea of yoga and participating in yoga, whether it's part of a studio or whatever. I know, me personally, we did yoga in junior high PE, and I loved it because, for one, it didn't require hand-eye coordination. I mean, the balance I was seriously lacking, but it didn't involve a volleyball, and I was so on board. And then at the end of it, our teacher was like, okay, we have a wind down 20-minute session, which basically was just a 20-minute nap in the middle of school. So I think that's what won me over. I was like, I don't know anything about yoga, but a 20-minute nap, I can do that.
Yes.
So
it is so appealing, especially today, because we're just so overstimulated. I feel like I say that all the time, but we are so overstimulated, and everything's just moving so fast. And the whole concept of just quieting your mind and stretching, and it's good for you. And it's like, of course, especially as moms, like that just sounds like heaven.
It sounds so nice.
It sounds so nice.
I think of those commercials that occasionally come across the TV where it's like 15 seconds of Zen and it's, just rain falling. And I just sit there, I'm like, oh, that's so nice. And yoga kind of offers that allure of, man, we may even light some candles. We'll go into a dim room. There's no little toddler, drooling all over my clothes. This sounds incredible. So,
yes,
but
except for hot yoga, I don't get how people do it.
I
no
know.
Offense,
and no offense. Yeah. But I mean, there is just too much spandex and too much sweatiness for me to be on board for that. But I'm not a sauna person either. So,
and neither am I.
Yeah. And it was funny. I was reading your blog because you were like, oh, goats. I was like, even goat yoga. That just looks hilarious. I would get distracted. I wouldn't even stretch. I'd be messing with the goat.
Petting the goats. Yes,
exactly. But so that's why we want to kind of talk about this, because, it just seems like, oh, this is just something fun and kitschy. It's something that even our kids see in cartoons. I was laughing to Alexa, we've got a funny family photo. And, we were making crazy faces at a wedding, and my son's crazy face was like this little meditative yoga pose that he had just picked up in kids media as well. So it's not just us moms, our kids are seeing it. So that's why we're going to be roaring through it, looking at the history, and then just offering practical tips for you to have fruitful discipleship questions and discussions with your kids. So as we kick off, Alexa, there's a difference that you noticed between sort of the historical Eastern origins of yoga versus what we see today. So in our local studio. So let's just kind of take it back. So what is sort of the history and what some people may not know, the worldview behind historical yoga?
Yeah, so yoga, it's rooted in Hinduism, although it's been adapted by multiple worldviews, a lot of Eastern worldviews. But it's actually, a lot of times we think of it in the West as the stretching and the poses, but it's so much more than that's, like a very small part of what yoga actually is. So the whole point of, can I just read Marcia Montenegro's definition of yoga, because I feel like she words it so well.
Yes, Marcia Montenegro. Incredible name.
Yes. So she says yoga as a whole is a complex esoteric system. So esoteric is like having special knowledge, but that only like a small group of people could understand. So it's supposed to be this like special knowledge,
secretive,
wisdom. Yeah, secretive. Yeah. So it's a complex esoteric system oriented toward attaining liberation from a false reality and uniting with the ultimate reality or God, however that God may be perceived. So the thing about Hinduism is that it's not this like rigid religion with like a set doctrine. It's actually kind of more of an umbrella term for a variety of philosophies.
Yeah.
But so some Hindus might say they believe in God. Some would say they believe in a multitude of gods, and some would say they don't believe in God at all. But there's a worldview that is undergirding all of these philosophies, and it undergirds yoga. And that's the idea that all is one. It's called monism, that everything is connected, that this, like, our individual reality is kind of an illusion. And so the whole idea of yoga is to connect with your higher self, which is connected with this supreme consciousness that flows throughout all of reality, it's like this impersonal force.
Wow.
So sometimes they'll see it as manifested in Hindu gods, and there's like 3 main Hindu gods, but then there's like millions of deities that are worshipped. But it's all comes from this impersonal force that we can each attain oneness with.
Wow. So how does one liberate oneself? So false reality, it's this belief that we're kind of these operating individuals. And so the true reality is that we are all connected. And so how does one liberate yourself from that false reality that they're talking about?
So there's different methods to do this, but you want your identity really to kind of lose your individual identity and take on the identity of this supreme being. So yoga is one way to do this. Meditation.
Right.
It's really just like realizing who you really are, your true, this whole idea of the true self, which if anybody watched the Enneagram episode that we did, I feel like the idea underneath this is so connected to so much of what we're seeing in culture that it's everywhere, which is why I think this is relevant conversation, even if you're not someone who does yoga. It's because the worldview is so invasive in our culture, prevalent.
Wow. Yeah. And, you could see some of the allure of that just from a morality and accountability standard, because if there is no objective God, then there is no right and wrong. Your goal as an individual is just to kind of become one with this oneness. And so, from a morality standpoint, it seems like there's not a whole lot of grounding for it. There's not a lot of accountability toward an objective moral standard. It's just, no, your goal in life is just to, I don't know, is enlightenment, is that a proper word to use here? Is to achieve enlightenment. That's the sum total. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, and I may not be, is part of the aspect of this worldview is that the issues that we have in life, the struggles, the trials, the frustrations, that's all due to our attachment to this world. Is that part of that, or is that more on the Buddhist side of things?
No, that's a part of it. And being able to detaching from your kind of individual identity, but also from the possessions, worldly possessions, from physical reality. And so they'll say that when you're really trying to realize your divine inner self, because the God is within you. And so we've been distracted by this, physical reality and by our desires. And so we want to detach from those desires, and then you'll see who you really truly are inside.
Man, isn't that so funny how so many false religions, and I mean, I'm not talking, just with the Hinduism and Buddhist side of things, even when we think of feminism or postmodernism, it always ends up rooting the solution to our problems or the power to within us. I mean, it really does elevate us as idols, and sort of we become our own stumbling block by our own busyness. And we just need to disconnect, unplug, channel in to these different sort of pathways towards spirituality. And then that's how we achieve this enlightenment, heaven on earth type of mindset. It's wild.
Yes. That reminds me of the C.S. Lewis quote where he says, there's two kinds of, I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but there's two people in this world. It's you either say to God, my will be done, or thy will be done.
Yes.
And it's like, it's completely opposes the biblical worldview.
So then how does this affect how yoga is done today? Because I'm trying, and again, I'm not familiar with yoga about as much I know about it as I watched a Christmas movie where she was trying to rescue her Santa brother, and he was starting a yoga studio in like Arizona. And I'm like, okay, so there's incense, there's some statues. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. There's some statues, and there's like some people in really comfortable stretchy pants. Like, so how does the worldview affect how we see yoga being practiced today?
Well, today, our Western worldview, we look at it a lot of times as just exercise and stretching. And I think it really depends on the individual studio that you go to or the instructor that you use. Because like I know someone who is a yoga instructor. She said she went to the training and they did all the new age, all the Eastern worldview kind of stuff, but she just ignores it. And like, she really just cares about the exercise part. So there are going to be some classes that you'll go to that it's more just like that. And then there's probably a spectrum of how much of that worldview they are incorporating, because I'm sure that most classes are going to say namaste at the end. So I really can't, there's so many yoga studios. I don't know how to, it seems like there's just a wide spectrum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and I'd imagine some of these retreats and things, they probably lean more heavily into the worldview because, again, that's kind of this
the whole purpose.
The whole purpose of it. Yeah. So, okay. So let's start looking at some of the things that we will see commonly happen. And one that I think every kid knows how to do is the Om. In fact, like I mentioned, my son's picture, that was his silly face was, he tried to cross his legs. He closed his eyes and did the whole finger thing where you clench your fingers and you just go Om. So that's pretty common. What is Om? Is it just a phrase to kind of try and silence all of those thoughts going through your head, or is there something more to the Om?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that that's what it is. It's just like a way to kind of get into a meditative feeling. But there's actually a whole worldview behind just that. So the Om, it represents the pagan god Ishvara. Okay. The Om it's a vibrating sound that you make. And the idea is you're trying to connect with the vibration of the universe, of creation. And so remember how everything is one?
Yeah.
Well, the Om is like the ultimate supreme God. It's the sound from which all other sounds come from. It's the sound from which all of creation is manifested from. And so when you're chanting this Om sound, the purpose of it is to bring your consciousness into oneness with this overall consciousness, this impersonal God. And the symbol that they make is representing the same thing. It's the Om symbol with the hand. I don't even like doing it.
Yeah, right.
It's like you're invoking this idol.
Wow.
Yeah. So like once I learned this, and then I was reading. Can I read you this quote? Because this is what made me go, like, really realize why some people have such aversion to yoga, Christians, why there's such an emotional response, like a repulsion to it. So let me read you this quote and then I'll explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
According to a study found in the National Library of Medicine, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is an ancient text, is one of the classical yoga texts in which the explanation about Om is well defined. In Sutra 25, it is said, there's some Sanskrit text there that I can't pronounce. This means that in God, there is the root for endless omniscience. This description is taken further in Sutra 26. The sutra says, another Sanskrit thing I can't pronounce, this means that since Ishvara is not limited by time, he is the original guru, or the guru of the earliest guru. So this is a supposed higher power from end quote.
Yes.
This is the supposed higher power from whom all creation flows, who doesn't just have omniscience, which means to be all knowing, but is omniscience itself. The power is eternal. It's not limited by time. This, to me, the thing I immediately thought of was the Logos, which is Christ. He is the word. The Greek word for the word is Logos. And he is the one from whom all creation is made. He is eternal. He is omniscient. And so it's just like this Hindu concept is ancient. I mean, it's well before the New Testament. And so it's just kind of creepy to me that we have this counterfeit Christ.
Exactly.
Thousands-year-old worldview.
Wow.
That when we're doing yoga, we're invoking this
counterfeit Christ. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And what brought to mind is when you mentioned that about music is, music has always been used by religions as a way of getting one's focus. And then within yoga studios, often what you'll see is a gong. And so to hit that again, you're even connecting from an auditory level, not just for what you're hearing, but also what you're saying, to this false worldview that turns out to be, this isn't just an innocuous this is an invocation of a counterfeit Christ.
Yeah.
Wow. Golly, Satan is so clever. That's wild. I had no idea that there was that history behind it. And the poses as well. The poses are not just, how to build up your core strength. There is meaning behind every single pose within yoga as well. Can you give us a few examples?
Yes. So some of the poses are created after Hindu deities. So there's statues of Hindu deities. So some of the poses are representing these statues. There's also hand postures, like certain ways, like they're called mudras. Yeah. So all of these have special meanings to them. Each one has special meanings to it, to invoke different deities. And so some of the poses, they're called asanas. There's the sun salutations. I tried to choose ones that I recognized, because then probably most people will recognize what they are. Sun salutations is a series of movements that you're actually worshiping the sun. So again, since everything is one, this is a pantheistic worldview where God is in all of creation. And so there's this worship of the created things like the sun. Well, from a Christian worldview, it's worship of created things by God, right? So that's a whole series of poses meant to worship the sun. We've got the warrior pose, which is meant to worship the Hindu god Virabhadra. And So that's kind of an intense mythology that's behind that. You're acting out these poses of vengeance, and it's violent.
Wow. Not what you'd expect from a yoga studio.
No. Yeah, it's interesting when you start really reading that. But you're supposed to feel empowered. And so here's another thing that's difficult about all of this. You've got some people that do yoga that are really deep into it. Like if they're deep in the new age, so I'm not talking about Christians who are doing yoga, but new agers that are doing yoga that will like purposely be worshiping these deities, worshiping the sun. Like they are consciously doing that. But then you have other people that are deep into the new age, and they see these as symbols. So they're not like intentionally worshiping anything outside themselves. It's just they see these as representations of different philosophical views. And so that's why some of this gets tricky, because depending on where you're at and where you learn it, and who you study under, you're gonna view all of this very differently.
Yeah, it sounds like who you study under specifically, you're going to get a completely different take, and it could vary through each person. So that's fascinating. So each of the poses, and they help align what you say in your article, chakras.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about these chakras.
Okay.
Because I think we've all seen them. I think I've even seen them at smoothie places to where it's the person sitting cross-legged and you see the different colors and everything. So tell us a little bit about these chakras.
Oh my goodness. And once I started doing this research, I see chakras and yoga and anything associated with it, the Om symbol, all over the place. It's crazy. It's in jewelry. It's
in house decor. Like, I mean, I've seen it even, especially for teen bedrooms. It's like, this is an aesthetic that you can decorate with.
It's so pretty.
It is.
So pretty.
It is. And you know what sometimes the most deadliest things are. So tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about these chakras.
Yeah. So the chakra is this theory that there's energy. So you've got the oneness, and throughout all of creation is this energy that flows through. And that energy also flows through us and our bodies, and it remains dormant at the base of this is the idea. It remains dormant at the base of our spine like a snake. And the energy travels up your spine as you open your chakras. So chakras are supposed energy centers. There's 7 main chakras, and they go down from like the top of your head down to the base of your spine. And the idea is you want your chakras, the energy within your chakras, to be balanced, because if they're out of balance, then you have issues in your life, from physical problems to relationship problems, emotional problems.
Wow.
And the higher up you go, you open up your chakras, you can supposedly get enlightenment. Some people say you get like superpowers, kind of like levitating. And some people believe you can get psychic powers. Because if you're opening all these chakras and you're retaining enlightenment, you open the top chakra and you accomplish your goal of uniting with this supreme consciousness. Remember that this consciousness is it's like the God of creation. It contains all knowledge. If you can connect with this, then it logically follows, then you'll have psychic abilities.
Wow. And it's so funny you bring that up, because I was thinking about it this morning, prepping for the podcast. I remember as a kid, there had been a news report on our local news of a yoga studio. And these individuals believed that if they reached enlightenment, they would be able to levitate. And so they felt like they were starting to get there. And the news footage is they had been sitting, and it was like all the cool hipster girls in high school sat this way, where they crossed their legs, but their feet were both like on the top of their thighs. I don't know how they did that. My knees would rip off if I tried that.
I think that's a yoga pose.
Yeah. So, so what they would do, but then they would use their legs to hop. And so it was just footage of them hopping around the studio like this. And they're like, if we meditate enough, if we jump high enough, eventually we're just going to be able to fly, for the most part. And that was seen as like, this is this achievement. So it's so funny you mentioned that, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember seeing a studio as a kid that they were trying to achieve this, and it made the news because of it. So
yes.
Wow.
Yes. Okay. It can go into some wacky realms in if you go very far with it.
Oh man. And it's fascinating too looking at it because we think, oh, this is just poses. But no, we're seeing, okay, this is not only a worldview to connect you with the spiritual, but now these spiritual tenets have perceived power on the physical around us, to where, oh, if you're struggling with your love life, or if maybe your work life isn't going well, it could be your chakra is out of alignment and you need to, and I know they have new age healers, correct? To where that will also help you not only through yoga poses, but maybe through use of crystals, even smoothies, health foods to try and align your chakras, because that's what's going on in your life. It's not necessarily a sin issue. It is just a chakra imbalance.
Yes. And this actually relates to, if you've ever heard of grounding.
Okay.
And I've heard about this through people that are into like holistic natural methods of healing and stuff. So this is being presented as just a natural phenomenon, but grounding is, walking barefoot in nature
through
soil,
nature.
And something about like you're getting ions and elements from the ground in your body, and it's supposed to draw out your energy and your chakras and balance them for you.
Wow.
And so that's where that idea comes from.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that this is a mythical, it's pure, the idea of chakras is purely spiritual.
Wow.
There's nothing scientific about it.
Wow.
But it's accepted by a lot of people.
Yeah, and I've also seen that exact thing promoted as a way of healthcare of walking barefoot, especially through the woods. I mean, that's what's really promoted, is to go into the forest and connect with nature, take off your shoes and walk barefoot.
Yeah.
That's how you decompress, and especially as someone from the Pacific Northwest, which not only is heavily steeped not only in trees and rain, but also new age practices. I mean, it was very common up there as well. And even within yoga, you mentioned that there's a tree pose that actually connects you. It's sort of like a tree worship. Again, we see poses that worship the sun, and now we even have trees, and now we have practical field trip opportunities that's encouraged to go and walk through nature barefoot, because that'll help decompress.
Right. Well, and I want to be clear too, because I think that there are some scientific studies that show that when you have contact with grass and soil, that there are you do gain some health benefits from it, but I just want to separate that from the fact that it's this energy healing that's happening, because that part is the mythical part.
Right. Yeah. That hyper focus on worshiping creation.
And that, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. So
if that's going to solve all your problems in life and solve your emotions and that.
Yeah, right. Just go walk outside in the grass for a little while. You'll be all right.
I wish.
I know, right? So those of us with allergies are like, no, that's not going to work out. I will die.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't
think about that.
I know, right? Okay, so the hot button question: Christian yoga. I mean, is this something that we can sort of, and I use this phrase lightly, jokingly, Christianize? I mean, how do we approach this issue? Is no, I'm a Christian. I enjoy yoga, so it's not like I'm doing worship. I'm just stretching, and when I'm oming, I'm really just meditating on Ecclesiastes or something.
Yes, this is hard. I think because I totally this causes a lot of division among people, and I see both sides, where the one side is just so exhausted by the legalism they see from Christians, and then the other side is just completely frustrated with syncretism in the church, where people are tending to rather than allowing the faith that's been passed down through the historic church to shape our worldview. So many Christians today are kind of just like picking and choosing which beliefs that really make the most sense to them, that really resonate with them.
Yep.
So it's less of a study to understand what's been passed down. It's more of this, salad bar situation.
Oh yeah. Buffet style identity that I can just slap Jesus on and be like, okay, it's good.
Yeah. So both of these are two problems, and freedom in Christ is something that is very important to believers, but so is holy living.
Yes.
And so it gets tricky to talk about this, because I don't want to be condemning people, and especially people that are Christians that are just trying to find ways to honor the Lord with their bodies and their life. So I want to be gentle about this.
Right.
But what we're doing, if we like back up and look at it from a
Right.
big picture, is we're taking a worship ritual
Mhm.
meant and made for worshiping false gods
Mhm.
and just putting Christian language on top of it,
Yeah.
and then convincing ourselves that, hey, at least I'm not thinking about these other gods. I'm not thinking in that way. I can just put Bible verses in my mind instead and worship God while I do it. It's just like once you start to look at someone doing the pose who is
Mhm.
saying they're worshiping God, but their body is worshiping a
Yeah.
false god,
Yeah.
it gets
Yeah.
a little tricky there.
Yeah. I mean, and that's such a great point. It's wait a second, leave emotion out of it. Let's just look at what's being done. Do the sayings have meaning? Do the poses have meaning and purpose within this false worldview? And if the answer is yes, then that's not something that we should be participating in. And I think maybe what a lot of gals are struggling with is, it's this desire for fellowship with other ladies and to do something relaxing because physical activity is a stress reliever. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, that doesn't mean that you've lost an ability to decompress, to get fit, or to have fellowship or communities. We're just not supposed to seek it out in ungodly ways. And so I think maybe for some, that may be part of the challenge is, oh, no, it doesn't mean anything. They don't want to give up their classes or maybe affect their routine any. But really, it's wait a second, what we do with our bodies matter. What we do with our
Yes.
bodies conveys a worldview. Which worldview am I conveying? If somebody from the outside is looking in, what are they going to conclude based on our actions, and are our actions reflecting the biblical worldview? And if the answer is no, or if there is some gray or ambiguity, we should be willing as Christians to make minor personal sacrifices for the glory of the kingdom. And if we're not, then the question goes, okay, well, then what truly is our God? What truly are we striving for? So
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
And I think as far as other people looking in and seeing what we're doing, I think there are quite a few people that really don't associate yoga with New Age or with the worldview behind it. But if you start to look for that, if you just start to look around wherever you go, like you'll start noticing that it's everywhere. So even if your particular yoga class feels just like just pure exercise, that's probably in the minority. I'm guessing. Even if they're just like inserting little things here and there, some meditation and all of that is part of the worldview and like the original purpose of yoga. So as much as it doesn't always look like you're doing something that has to do with another religion or another worldview, you very much are. Like I had someone comment about how eyeliner, the origin of eyeliner comes from warding off evil spirits in Egypt.
Yep.
And so then they're like, so should we never wear eyeliner because that's what that was made for?
Right.
But I think there's a major difference in something that has completely been disassociated from its origin, and yoga has not been disassociated from it.
Right.
So, I mean, you can see if you type it into Google or you look at like yoga type decor, you'll see the chakras, you'll see you'll see all of the worldview there. So even if in your own mind, you don't associate it, most of the world does.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even your room, your yoga studio or where you are, you're supposed to adjust the room and what you have in the room to make for a more beneficial yoga experience. And all of that, again, is hearkening into, okay, sort of this altar type worship of how can I have a better worship service within this practice of yoga. So even that, even the aesthetic has spiritual implication, has spiritual meaning. And so we as Christians should be very careful when we are engaging in that sort of activity, because that then becomes, okay, are we actually now crossing the line into worshiping something else? So, Alexa, we were kind of joking because we both have kids and, kids are wonderful, but they are very blunt and they often lack tact. I mean, that's what we're constantly trying to work with our kids on. So
Yes.
kids are notorious for being super black and white. And when they recognize something is wrong or false, they can be very loud about that and very loud about holding everyone accountable. So
Yes.
how do we as parents help nurture our little blessings from Jesus to model grace as well as they model truth?
Yes, it is a task. I
Right?
think it takes time and patience, because yes, they're very black and white. No matter how my experience with my kids
Okay.
is that I will try to be so like nuanced when I'm explaining things to them,
Yeah.
and like not everybody knows God yet, and
Mhm.
maybe not everybody's thought about this. Like if we're talking about yoga, not everybody's thought about yoga and done the research like I have, and so
Mhm.
we're talking about it, and but we have to be careful. We have people in our life that like yoga, and like we're
Mhm.
not going around like beating people up with our new knowledge, right? And like
Right.
condemning people. That's not what we're here to do. And so I'm trying I'm trying to teach them grace
Mhm.
and how patient God is with us. And still, my kids we'll go past a yoga studio and they'll go, yoga, ew. Or my son,
Yes.
my son was at a dance thing, and they were doing stretching, and he came home and he goes, Mom, we had to stretch today, and it felt suspiciously like yoga. And I almost
I love
died.
it. Oh my
It was
God.
so funny. But I really think that there is this fear,
Mhm.
because I know that I have this and I'm like working through it.
Right.
But I think there's this fear among Christian moms that if I teach my kid that something is wrong or that our family doesn't participate in that,
Yeah.
that they're going to become super judgmental,
Mm.
and we have this fear that, and I know some parents will just not have those conversations and just
Yep.
not talk about what's right and wrong because, and this pertains to other areas as
Mhm.
well, not just yoga, but because they're so afraid of accidentally creating little legalistic jerks. And and I think we have to just pray through that and
Yeah.
realize how patient the Lord is with us
Mhm.
when we're learning something new. I mean, how long
Yes.
does it take us sometimes? Probably can't expect our kids to learn those things just in one conversation.
No, and I mean that's such the blessing of why God gave us kids is because if we are believers, he has given us spiritual armor and we have to learn how to wield that armor. And so we as parents, our role is to help shape our children wield that biblical armor. And sometimes they're not going to use it all that great. And we
Mhm.
shouldn't fear those moments. Instead, we say, okay, I see what you're saying. Everything you said was true. However, the way in which you conveyed it probably did not resonate very well with the individual. They may not want to hang out, or maybe it misrepresented Christ in some way. And so that's our opportunity as parents to be like, okay, great job speaking truth. However, we need to make sure that we're tailoring our approach to show the beauty of Christ and the need for Christ. And we can always point back to Christ's example with how he dealt with unbelievers, just Zacchaeus and woman at the well right off the bat. Those are excellent examples for how, okay, wait a second, he's not affirming their sin, but he's not allowing their sin to strip them of their humanity or their need for the gospel. So when it comes to kids and we're teaching them, whether it's yoga or whatever topic, it's okay, look, yes, this is not a good thing. So how then would we maybe talk to somebody about this and let your kids have those kind of fumbles within the home? So that way they become, once they leave the home, they become better stewards of their spiritual armor and better representators of Christ when they're out there. And so yeah, I love that point you made that yeah, as parents, it's totally true. We can just fear those moments where our kids don't do well. And sometimes that can cause us to not want to speak life into our children. But
Mhm.
instead, we are called to help train up our children in the way that
Yeah.
they should go with training and instruction, Ephesians 6. And that requires diligence and commitment and repeated approaches from us as parents.
Yes.
I
That's so good.
Thank you so much, Alexa, for just this wonderful time to be able to discuss this concept of yoga. You've got 2 blogs on the Mama Bear website. So
Yep.
Crash Course, and what's the second one?
Roaring Through Yoga?
Roaring
Yes,
Through Yoga.
Roaring Through
Yes.
Yoga.
So there's 2 blogs that Alexa has done, Crash Course in Yoga and Roaring Through Yoga. These are a little bit longer because there is so much to unpack, but they are completely worth it to dive in. Do you have, just off the top of your head, because we have other moms who just love digging into books and sources, do you have any of your favorite sources that you found during your study that you would recommend?
There's a book called The Second Coming of the New Age by Josh Peck and Stephen Bankars, which was helpful for me in learning about the worldview behind yoga. It's not just about yoga. So it's just about the new age in general, but I found that really helpful. Might be more than you're looking for, but and then can I mention a podcast episode that was really helpful? If you look up a podcast episode by Beckett Cook on yoga, he interviews a woman who used to be a yoga instructor. And I just thought it was such a good, helpful conversation that they had, and they really dealt with it with such like that balance of love and truth. But that was a very interesting conversation that I would highly recommend.
Hoorah. All right. So we're going to have both of those listed in the show notes. So go ahead and you can just click on there to listen to another podcast or find the book because, hey, we love it. We would rather give you too many sources than too few. So Alexa, thank you so much for joining us today and just being able to discuss all the things regarding yoga. Mamas and Papa Bears, we hope this has been a blessing for you so that you can understand not only the history behind yoga, the purpose, of the poses, the sounds, and so that you will be able to go out and further the kingdom just by knowing what's going on in this world and being able to accurately represent Christ. So Mamas and Papas, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you a great rest of the week.